Okay, it's my pleasure to announce the next topic, which is emerging trends and concepts in media and broadcast. We will be covering such topics as evolving media consumption habits and the migration of content viewing, video on the go enablement, challenges, opportunities, and new business models. Now allow me to introduce our esteemed panelists. Mr. Samar Geissah, VP Consumer New Business and Innovation Commercial of Do. Mr. Mario Hachem, CEO and founder of TEDMOB. Mr. Ben Kinealy, CEO of Intigral. Mr. Roque Solabarrieta, COO of E-vision. Mr. Dabaghi, Vice President TV and Media of Middle East and Africa of Ericsson. And please welcome Moderator, Mr. Jawad Abbassi, Head of MENA of GSMA. Please welcome our panel, everyone. Thank you.
So, please, start with your first introductions.
My name is Ben Kinealy. I'm CEO of Intigral. We're a media company that takes care of primarily STC's content. In this space, I think we could go in many different directions. Georges and I were talking before about where we should be going here. A bit louder? Yeah. That was good. I'll have to shout. And I think the area that we're particularly interested in is how television, not just video on demand, moves online. And we are expecting that over the next 5 years, majority of the commercial side of video will come from online rather than broadcast. And we're trying to get ourselves in the right position for that, be that video on demand, be that linear, be that smart advertising.
So even linear you think will move online?
Totally. I think it's all going to go online, and it's going to be the major place where you make money, because if you know the traditional free-to-air space, which is obviously advertising supported, the advertising revenue worldwide is moving from free-to-air to online. That's because of the targeted approach of online, of course, which broadcast cannot do. Broadcast up until now has been a very expensive play online, and the rights haven't been there. Now the rights are opening up, and it's actually going to be moving online. What's going to happen is people can actually start to target their ads down to that customer, very much like Google inside a linear channel, which therefore allows you to be able to have the CPM rate lift dramatically. Now in this space, obviously, the advertising revenue has been dramatically hit by oil and so on. So
the content will be linear, but the provision of ads will be depending on who the user is.
I think you'll get a combination of VOD, be that TVOD, SVOD, premium VOD, ad-supported VOD. You'll get linear channels with dumb linear channels. You'll get linear channels with advertising that have been placed in them. And you'll also get playlist channels. Playlist channels that look like linear, but are actually made up from VOD. And I think the players who move into that space will obviously be able to profit from it. And the telcos also will come into that space and start to recognize the benefit of having that as one of their major services to drive broadband.
I see. Okay. Samar?
Samar Geissah. I head the Consumer New Business and Innovation at Do, where, like Ben was saying, we've started this transformation in order to get ready for the big wave. Our CEO this morning was highlighting how it's one of our pillars that we're moving from, the OTT to the TTO through the operator, and we've been enabling a lot of OTT players to offer their services to our base, but in parallel also studying the actual consumption of linear, VOD, etc., that our base is going through in the rest of the UAE, and also planning and the way forward in terms of what services, what attracts them. And then as a topic of discussion, I think there's a lot to talk about in this discussion about the plans and whether it's content, whether it's services related to this domain.
So you're doing some studies on how the linear consumption of linear versus consumption of video on demand.
Yeah,
Can you share with us, or is it confidential information?
No, not at all. So in our base, as declared in our annual reports, we have over 150,000 IPTV subscribers, and because it's an IPTV system, we've designed it from the beginning with our partners to deliver almost daily reports regarding the usage. There's a steady, in terms of numbers, there's a steady use of the linear channels still. So in terms of exact figures, we roughly have about an average of 2 hours per person or per household per day in terms of watching linear channels. On the VOD side of things, we average, I would say, an aggregate of about 14 minutes daily.
A day. Okay.
Yes.
Per subscription.
Per subscription. Now, in comparison, the similar base, same size base, purely on the fixed side of things, if you gather up all the OTTs that are being offered in the region officially, not through VPN, the number is in the about 60,000 users, right? So it's still early days where it's not consuming bigger or equal to the existing IPTV base, but it's moving very fast. So the moment, for example, Netflix launched earlier this year, we saw a huge uptake in the existing base and conversion from using VPNs to standard account. Now, as content gets richer for any of those OTTs, including ours, of course the consumption will be higher. And like Ben said, eventually, no one will be watching the standard, broadcast TV the same way we used to, where you have to watch somebody else's programming. You will watch what you want, when you want, on whatever device you want. So we have the facts, we have the data that shows that this is the transition that's ongoing.
Very good. Mario?
Hi, my name is Mario Hachem. I'm the co-founder of TEDMOB. TEDMOB is mainly a technology enabler and technology agencies that we develop the solutions, and we sit between Intigral and the operator, for example. So we are like enabler to sell the content and to develop all kinds of services that fits the operator needs and fits the consumer needs. So in brief, we are an agency that develop mobile applications, we develop the platform, the video on demand platform and stuff. We also support recently the startups and entrepreneurs in also transforming their idea into life. So our main focus is to try to bring the technology from one side, the content from another side, and the payment and the billing from the third side, combine them together and offer our solutions.
What's the compelling business model that you see these days, the one that you would advise content owners to have?
So basically, the content today is more focused into video content. So you have many types of video content. You have the first type, which is video on demand content. And you have another type, which is the content that you receive on daily basis. So there's a revenue share if you are working over the top. So the revenue share is usually 30%, 70% with Apple and Google Play and whatever. And if you are working with the operator, now the operator are shifting to this revenue share using direct carrier billing. So usually, yes, it's about 30 and 70%, and sometimes it's more and sometimes it's less. So the revenue share of selling any type of content is this. Unless you go and you plan your own platform, your own video on demand platform, and you can go and sell it using the third way, which is e-commerce or e-banking solution.
Thank you. Roque?
Yeah, my name is Roque Solabarrieta. I'm the COO of E-vision. E-vision is a content aggregator for Geissah. Look, I completely subscribe to the points mentioned by Ben, by Sam. Slightly in between, I see 2 or 3 things that I would like to highlight. One is, yes, there's an increased usage of OTT in the region and, of course, globally. But I think this has also been driven fantastically by companies like Ericsson or Huawei, all the other partners out there, that has really created, reduced the barriers of entry into the market. Because this is pretty much what happens in the telecom world back in the 90s, which has really enabled the fragmentation of content production across the world. And now you have thousands and thousands of people creating content on a daily basis. Now, the issue that I see with that is at some point in time, the user will come to say, well, I love personalization, but at the same time, when is it enough, the level of personalization that I need to have? And companies that I work for, we need to try to find the balance on the content aggregation side, as well as for our customers to say, what do we take? How much do we personalize? Of what is the level of fragmentation of the content that we're going to take? That also must be financially viable for us, because otherwise you can carry a lot of content that only is viewed by 10 people or 20 people, and that doesn't work. So I think there needs to be a balance, and I think it's still, particularly in the region, I still see that TV has a significant role to play. I know that there's a lot of discussion about OTT, but the information that we have is that TV continues to be very important for the habits of the people here. The question is, what are the millennials going to do when they get older, like what we, or I am at least, to say, would they just continue to watch on OTT, or would they start changing their habits and start watching TV or consuming content in a more normal way under all parameters? So those are the things that I would like.
So your point on too much personalization, is it the threat that people will eventually just pigeonhole themselves into some sort of an echo chamber? For example, personalization of news, then effectively you're just tuning in to what you want to hear, and you become disinformed effectively.
Yeah. That's one. And it's also for the content creators. I mean, think about companies like YouTube. He has enabled, it's a fantastic tool, but has enabled the creation of content by millions of people out there. And even then, when you talk to them, yes, great launch, great platform, but now I need to make money. I need to differentiate myself with the person next to me. How am I going to do that? We have millions of people creating similar content next to me. So it has to come to a certain point in time when the differentiation of the quality of the content or the audience that they reach to start making sense, even for the content creators.
George, you represent a major technology company that enables all of the talk. So you've heard operators talk. So what's your take on what they said?
So first of all, I'm George Dabaghi. I'm the practice head for TV and media for Ericsson and region. I'm going to be the contrarian here, okay? So I'm going to throw some spice into the argument, okay? The way I see it... Shall I
get you another chair a bit away?
Look, we talk a lot about video, especially this group here. We've been talking a lot about video. It is our bread and butter every day in what we do. But, the trend, everyone among the operator community, among the providers, the vendors, and everyone is talking about video occupying the majority of the growth in mobile data, in mobile data in the next, say, 6 years to 13 folds, probably 13 times. But there is shyness in investing in video services. And what we're talking about is not the first generation of video services that emerged in region, but something which is quite revolutionary, actually. So going back to the theme this morning, it is a revolutionary thing with video. It's not going to be an evolution. And why? Because you need a sustainable model. That's what we are pushing into. We need a sustainable model for both profitability for those launching it, but also for the end customer, because the habits are changing dramatically. And while so far in every operator you find that there are teams that are studying probably some aspects of analytics and data, the only time you're going to have deep insights is when you automate this, because the amount of devices, the amount of different shifting content rights, shifting content consumption habits, some of them could be very counterintuitive. And I'll mention a few examples in the next, all this is not going to be detected by human beings. It's not going to be detected by the traditional marketing teams or the operations teams, with all due respect to what the gentlemen do on a day-to-day basis. This is something that's going to be deep analytics, which is driven by cloud computing largely. Mm-hmm. Applied to a huge set. That's when we're going to see the insights. That's when we can focus and monetize very carefully. And I'll give you an example. And this is the counterintuitive thing that I am leading to, which I sent you in the Ericsson Consumer Lab report 2016, which we could share, is there. Netflix have done a worldwide study since its international launch in 2016. I think 81% or 81% plus of the user base, after they binge for 3 days of series watching, they stop for a certain period of time, and in that period of time, they consume a movie asset, not continuous binging on series. Then they resume. These insights we will never get, but I mean, look where the analytics are going now. And this is something that you can capitalize on. Another example, and again, counterintuitive. We don't see today in our market a movement to OTT with, for example, sports content. You look at the paid sports content in region, that's still largely on DTH, or it made it a little bit on the networks of the gentlemen, in STC and Do and Etisalat, but with the probably small exposure. But there is a huge opportunity to move it to devices, okay? And the enablement, of course, there is challenges with that enablement moving forward. So, I think the message being the operators really need to look at this, not from, putting this case, the business case on their investment boards for profit and loss in the short term. This should be an investment irrespective what, because only then we will gain insights into the specific markets that we are operating in.
If I
Samer has a rebuttal or a comment?
No, it's a comment to complement what George is saying. I think from our point of view, there's two things. One, there's the big picture, the immediate requirements. So looking at what our customers are viewing and offering them more of what they like viewing. So on a day-to-day basis, I get reports of how many video-on-demand assets have been watched, what kind, what genre. It's not in the tens of thousands of data fields as Amazon will probably have to categorize their viewing habits, their customers' viewing habits. But in our case, we still know enough to be able to say, you know what, I think we need a group of channels just for the South Asians, or a group of channels for German-speaking, nationalities, etc. So, and that's something that we've been doing with the support of our colleagues from, IT and product engineering for the past years. I think what you're talking about is something that telcos in general are doing a great job on, whether on TV or mobile. There's a lot of statistics, and it doesn't exist right now. But for example, what are the natural behavior of somebody who's watching a linear channel, but also has a companion device, and he's watching or viewing something else to complement the content? Can I technically now be able to extract this viewing habit versus how many people are in the same room watching this content, who's paying attention, who's not? Right now, technically I don't. Although all the data is there, but we're not as a telco geared up for this. Mm-hmm. So there is a big overhaul project that's going on in our company to get ready for this. But again, we're not the subject matter experts when it comes to even monetizing it, because this requires a different set of skills and different mindset of people. So partners will probably fill this gap eventually. But you're right, I think there are multiple opportunities when it comes to trends of what we need to prepare for. Obviously, getting the business right now, getting the satisfaction with the service that it offers, the right content to the right people. Just don't forget, in the UAE, I think we have over 200 nationalities, out of which I think in our fixed footprint, we're serving 188. So in order to just satisfy 188 different nationalities' taste and content, you'd have to be very flexible, and that's something we aspire to do very soon.
Ben has a comment, I guess.
Obviously we can go in so many different directions here, and obviously we can talk about the type of content, we can talk about how we direct the customer to that content through recommendation engines, through promotions, through whatever, and how we monetize it. But one of the big things that George has touched on, which I think aligns with this conference because it's a telco conference, is how the telcos are or are not getting ready for this video wave.
Absolutely.
And right now, 65% of all data across international fixed and mobile networks is video. That is going to go to 95% in the future, because video's not only compressing, but it's also getting big with 4K VR, all those type of things. And that is not a flat line. That's a hockey stick, right? So as Georgia said, 13 times the amount of video traffic. So basically your telco networks are going to be video networks. You like it or not, they're going to be there.
Absolutely.
You either learn to make it work for you or you lose. That's the simplicity. And this isn't going to be just fixed networks that run it. It's mobile 5G, it's going to be satellite internet, it's going to be all those things, many of which is going to be powered by the video proposition. Because the customer doesn't have any clue what ADSL or fiber or 5G or any of those things are. They will go where the content is. So the telco who starts to understand how to use video across the network better than the other guy can distribute it cheaper and faster and at a more sustainable, at a higher quality than anybody else, and then has the content proposition to be able to attract the customers, will win. That is something that isn't being embraced well enough in many places in the world, including here. If you look to the States and you see what's happening where Comcast has been doing this for quite a while, obviously being a pay TV provider who got into broadband using video to drive customers, now you see the big players by AT&T buying DirecTV, powered by DirecTV Now, which is an OTT play, enables them to be able to get back over their ADSL and future 5G networks to empower that. And as such, they go buy Time Warner, or at least trying to buy Time Warner. I could give you many signals of the same thing. In short, video is the future for telco. The telcos who embrace video will win.
So, if you allow me, I'm going to follow up on a point made by George about binge viewing and also video on demand and the death of linear TV. How will this fundamentally change the advertising model? If people aren't watching linear TV, and the whole model was you place advertisements every 20 minutes or so for 3 or 4 minutes, but now that people aren't going for linear TV, how should the advertising model cope with that? Is it in the content itself, paid advertisements? What?
Yeah, look, if I can.
You go ahead and then I'll come on.
Look, I believe that, the advertising model is really dramatically changing. And I think, target advertising platforms will emerge much more in the region. Being in OTT, being in IPTV, the level of information, the data that Sam, Ben, everybody's mentioning here, I think is just a wake up for the advertising industry that, you have all these platforms in the country or regionally that have much more information about the consumers, and we'll be able to kind of go and try to do what the online advertising is doing at the moment, but it's trying to do it over the big pie, which is the TV side. And when that is started to kind of really have results and to see how well that can be targeted, things will really dramatically change. And it's also new revenue streams for the telecom of the pay TV platforms.
Will there eventually be possibly a backlash about the end of anonymous watching? Linear TV, broadcast TV, you watch, the advertisers don't know who you are, and you get some ads based on certain studies. But might it be too creepy if you're watching something online and then they serve you an ad based on what you searched before, or where you are, or what you had for dinner?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God, it's just too intrusive of my personal life.
It's already too creepy. I mean, if you look at the, I've heard and I've read that, you could have a conversation with somebody and next thing Facebook is highlighting, something of interest that you were talking about. So, no, but the reality is, as you were saying, the advertisers need to adapt themselves to this new model. And we sit on a ton of data. A few years ago, one of our executives was having a debate with a colleague from Google and Eric Schmidt. And Eric Schmidt basically said, you guys have much more data than we do. Well, it's a fact. Yeah. We know what's now. Anonymity and of course regulations will never allow us to simply say, okay, here's what Jawad is doing and at this time. So we have to aggregate it in a way and format it and provide it in a way. Regulation here, for example, with the open data initiative that was announced, is beautiful because it allows us to have a structure in which we can share this data and monetize it based on the preferences of the user.
And that would make you on a level playing field with the global OTT players.
Well, in a way, it will take time. It's not immediate, obviously, but it will take time. But again, we have a lot more data to offer for those who elect, I'm one of those guys. I'm happy to give me advertising which is relevant to me, because it saves me the headache of looking for stuff.
Yeah.
So
Mario, you had a point, and
Yeah.
I'm aware of the time. We have 14 minutes left, so please start preparing your questions from the audience, because I'd like to keep the last 10 minutes for the audience questions and interactions. Mario.
From a technology guy or technology solution provider, we don't care if this is OTT or against OTT or whatever. I care about getting the content that I like. I want by the end of the day to watch the videos that I like. If you go 15 years ago, okay, you had one TV channel, which is a local TV channel that has sports inside. At 8 o'clock you have a news. At 8:30 you have a movie and whatever, yeah? Now you have more than 20 TV channels for sports. You have more than 60 TV channels, let's say, for news. You have more than 20 TV channels, especially for food and recipes and cooking of every day, right? So this is called from macro to micro. And now this is on the broadcasting level. If you go online, which is the trend, is everybody needs to go online and everybody needs to be connected. So it's the same way online. If I have now the video on demand, I have the OTT that offers me the series of the day, okay, that offers me the video that I like at any time, so I don't mind. That's why the operators at this stage, they need to join forces with the OTTs, and they need to offer a kind of mutual service for the users at home and for their customers. They cannot like fight them, or they cannot create a platform similar or parallel to them. From the advertising, we are developing now a great solution that allows me to detect what I'm watching and interact me with my mobile. This is called the second screen interaction. So this is coming. So yes, you will be able soon to detect everybody what is watching and how you can offer him ads on his screen or on TV. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'll start taking questions from the audience now. We have maybe time for 3 or 4 or 5 questions, depending on how long the questions are and how long the answers to these questions are. So, do I have any questions? Tony? Of course, I don't mind. Yes, we have.
My questions will go to Ben. Okay, as per the first start, you described the new Intigral platform, but it looks like you're duplicating Netflix.
Yeah.
Is this what you're doing? What is different between the new Intigral online or Netflix?
Okay, so
That's a
yeah.
provocative question right there.
We've created a platform.
Jay Daurak.
We've created a platform where it is internet television. And what I say by that is it can be IPTV or OTT. And it can be private OTT, which is using the same technology but over a private network. It includes linear television, the ability to go backwards on linear TV up to 14 days, the ability to go into video on demand, be that premium, transactional, new release, library, SVOD, and then into apps such as Netflix, etc. All under the same billing environment, one PIN number, with same recommendations, and something that can be plug and played by the customer in regards to setup within minutes or professionally installed, be that box or apps. That's what we've created, and that's meant to be it's positioning itself as a great start for internet TV in this region. But being internet TV can go anywhere in the world. It just needs to have different rights. So it's a fully cloud-based solution that enables us to be able to do it anywhere in the world.
What geographies are you targeting?
Beg pardon?
What geographies, what regions are you targeting?
We're launching in Kuwait next week. We'll be launching across other countries in the GCC over 2017.
Through certain partnerships with telcos or across all telco operators?
We're going to be going B2B and B2C. So we start with Viva Kuwait, and then we'll be going with other telcos across the region. Obviously, the group will be part of the target I go for, but we are definitely looking for a B2C play.
If you said it's via app, so it can be sold globally also.
Global. So right now, depending on rights, technically it's not a problem.
It's the right
Technically,
one,
we've
isn't it?
tested this worldwide. It works right now. And as it does here, you just need to have the right amount of broadband, and we need to set up the CDNs accordingly so it pumps out correctly in your area. But rights are the issues, and then you have to obviously pick up the rights per territory you go to, and that might mean that you have a swap out of different channels, different providers. The channels are a little bit more restrictive, VOD providers are much more open.
Thank you. I have
Speaking
one
of
more question.
rights, by the way, for example, when Netflix started here in the region, House of Cards rights were with OSN, not with Netflix.
Correct.
So Netflix launched in MENA, but OSN had the rights to its most compelling content in the MENA region. So
We're not a content owner or creator, we're an aggregator.
Okay, I have.
will you eventually go to the... Because Netflix started like that, but then they started producing their own shows. OSN now produces its own shows sometimes. So will you eventually produce your own shows?
In our path at the moment, the answer is no. We are looking to have everybody on our platform. As soon as we start creating our own content, people will see us as competitor.
Tony. Can't hear you.
Yeah.
Tamer. Okay. How do you, if Netflix will be regulated in UAE, okay, how you will deal with this? New competition, new OTT. Roque, please.
Look, okay, that's first of all, it's rightly that you say the assumption that if it's regulated. I think at some point in time, I think the companies need to identify or come to the fact that there are services out there that will have to be provided at some point in time. So, if the consumers are requiring, Netflix services, I mean, Intigral Group has partnered with Netflix in other parts of a footprint. In Pakistan, for example, we have done the partnership with Netflix. So, are we going to do something with Netflix? It's a lot about, if the right level of regulation is in place. It's something that I'm pretty sure the Geissah UAE team will be looking at it.
So from our side, we have no preference to any OTT provider. I mean, obviously, Netflix has global appeal. As I mentioned, if you look at the adoption rate of the existing mobile and fixed subscribers in DO network, the adoption rate of Netflix is very low. To be honest, people right now still look for their, TV providers to provide them content which is relevant to them. It's a very small fraction, and it's, without giving a lot of numbers out, but it's less than 50,000 users, at least on our network. Eventually it will grow, but what they're doing right now is they're building up what Ben is actually preparing for. They're building up the perception that you can get your OTT when you want it. So are we. We have a product called Do View, which offers you thousands of video on demand. We have hundreds of linear TV channels available for you free of charge for a Do IPTV user. And very soon, hopefully early next year, we're going to offer this also as an OTT service in the UAE.
Sorry.
Now, go ahead.
No, just to confirm, I mean, I think everybody think about Netflix, but I think, just like we do, we already have carrier billing agreements with many other OTT players in the region. So I'm not going to mention no one because I don't want to be unbalanced on who I remember, but those relationships already exist. What I think what is actually more interesting for me is to say, when would the customer think, well, I got this OTT, and then suddenly he has a 5 or 6. And this is where the role for us is to say how we can actually integrate the aggregation of content that at some point in time will become very cumbersome for the consumer to see where is House of Cards. Oh, is it in Ben's application? Or is it in Sam's application? Or is it in my application? And that, I think, is sometimes the content owners tend to be slightly,
Selfish.
Thank you. But, they think that they must have the OTT app. And for me, I think more from the consumer perspective, is like I prefer to give the content the easiest way for him to discover. And that's for me where the challenge is that I think Sam and I, we're having.
So the choice is really to the customer. just to finally close my statement. The choice is really up to the customer to choose right now how they want to consume the content and where. And our job is to give them all the choices possible, including what we believe they really want to watch.
We have 5 more minutes for questions. I don't see any questions, but I have a question to the 2 operators in the United Arab Emirates. In the context of the Middle East, you have it a bit easy here. It's a high-income country, and also many people live in high-rise buildings where they're not allowed to have their own satellite dishes. But if you go to a city like Beirut or Amman or Cairo or Casablanca, where free-to-air dominates because a lot less income available, and also piracy is rampant, and also satellite TV is available with excellent programming, free-to-air programming available. What advice would you give to these more challenging markets to advance SVOD and pay TV and IPTV services in the context of the availability of free-to-air for the masses?
I mean, look, if I take a perspective, 4 or 5, 10 years ago, I think what we have done is, we cannot think that TV is something that you invest and you get your return on investment next quarter or a year down the line. It's really a business that you really need to invest for the long term. And, you need to fight piracy. I mean, you're mentioning piracy, and I think it's great that you mentioned it because, even though the environment that you mentioned here, we have tons of amount of piracy in the UAE and in other parts of the GCC and MENA, which really hinders the content production, all players in the industry. But going back again, it's about do not look into the TV business as a short term. Invest in the business, invest in content, invest in the platform that will really you will reap the benefit later on, which all the companies I think here are doing at the moment.
Very good.
From my point, I think just to repeat what George started saying, I think the cost of entry now has become very affordable. So cloud-based solutions like the one Ericsson is offering, I'm sure Huawei and other vendors also have, are able to get you on board very quickly. I think the trick is getting the content right, studying content. I think my colleague Hassan, who handles all our content acquisition and all the video platform, is one of a handful in the Middle East who knows how to do this business properly. So in order, you have to study what you want, you have to know what your base is expecting, and then with the support of our partners and integrators and service providers and solutions like Mario also, you're able to put together something which Ben just is launching in Kuwait very soon.
I want to add one.
Yes, George, actually the final comment is for you, George, because we're running out of time.
Okay, so very quickly, this is the sum of this is we need to go from content to contextuality. What's going to create the critical mass is our knowledge of the contextuality of usage of content, which today we've been dealing with content, very statically, this is something that came from broadcasting sources and moved into the operators' networks. It's still static. Yes, we have the traditional mode of VOD and linear and all this, but they're still very traditional. When we talk about contextuality, take for example, in a few years, we're talking about this concept of the driverless car, and hundreds of thousands of these available. If you're moving with flow, the network is also monitoring what your preference is. And then it can push content that is very relevant at that time in the context of your movement, in the context of the situation.
That would increase also the addressable market for content because driverless cars means
absolutely.
more,
so this
more
is to
time
create
for
the
people
critical
to watch.
mass. We have to go from static content
Very true.
to something that is extremely contextual, whether whichever way you are driving or you're living your life effectively, content becomes very relevant to what you're doing.
Perfect.
That's how we go to mass scale.